What is up, and welcome into JR Weekly. It is week 6 of the NFL season, and I think we've officially gone off the rails today. This is absolutely crazy with everything that has unfolded, even in the last 2 hours since I got off the air on my Sirius XM show. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. Going to roll through all of the remaining games with the exception of Monday. Of course, I'm back on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern, same spot here to break down the Monday Night Football contest. So I won't talk about that game on the show today, but we'll give you some fantasy thoughts. We got to talk injuries, and I'm going to give you one player prop that I like from every single game. Before we dive into that, though, if you want the fantasy advice from yours truly and our team, we truly have a whole bunch of studs over there at FTNFantasy.com. Tools, rankings, projections, content galore. And you can get in on the cheap right now, and even cheaper with the promo code RATPACK. I like that right there. You want to get behind the paywall. It's a good way to do so. And I tell you what, probably the most popular feature right now, I didn't expect this, but it's the Discord chat that we have. I have my own channel because I'm old and I don't want to search through everybody else's comments. So if you want to talk directly to me, you can do so on Discord. Really popular. People are hitting me up as I'm talking right here. It's a really popular feature, and I go back and answer really everything that I can in there. It's an ongoing conversation. We even talk about other stuff unrelated to football, which is pretty cool. It's a great community that we have with the FTN Network, so go check it out, FTNFantasy.com if you play DFS, FTNDaily.com. New and improved optimizer, all kinds of tools there as well. I was actually just using right before this Kyle Murray's ownership projections, second to none right there. Really great advantage that you have at your disposal. And we have it across all the different sports that you can play, including esports there for DFS purposes. And at FTNBets.com as well, if you want betting picks like my -6.5 pick of Tampa last night. Yeah, great. Let's go for 2. Why not? Let's go for 2. Seriously, I don't care what your freaking chart says. I don't care what your chart says. Freaking going for 2 there, Nick Sirianni. Anyway, if you want to get in on that, I was right until then. You can get over at FTNBets.com. In addition to all the great picks that we have in our bet tracker, which, hey, we're transparent. You see, I lost that bet. I'm not going to come back after the fact and be like, oh, no, I had Philly with the backdoor cover. We're transparent. We're not touts. We're analysts. And you can go check that out. You can also get some other cool stuff like my player props tool, which I'll be updating later today. I was going to update it, but then every time I was about to update it today, it's like another news item came out. And there's still a few more that we're waiting on here. So that'll be updated later tonight over there at FTNBets.com. That promo code works on all of the sites. Also, Zach Ertz was traded. I thought that would be the big story today, but I guess not. Zach Ertz was traded to Arizona. I don't think he can play this week, but I actually honestly don't know. I'm going to have to look that one up. People were asking, I don't think he can clear COVID protocol first and foremost, but let's say in a regular year, if you were traded, you played on Thursday night, could you in theory play on Sunday or even Monday night? I don't know the answer to that question, honestly, because I don't think we've seen that happen. But Ertz goes to the Cardinals. The Eagles getting a 5th-round pick and a developmental corner or young corner to add to the mix there. The Eagles are stockpiling picks. They now have 10 draft picks, potentially 3 top 10 draft picks, depending on what Carson Wentz does this season. I know Philly fans, I'm in a text thread with a bunch of buddies in the Philly area, and they are all fuming. I mean, do we really expect the Eagles to be good this year? But they are calling for Nick Sirianni's job. I think, if anything, this means the runway is pretty long. It seems likely they're going to draft a quarterback next year. And if that is the case, then Sirianni is probably going to be around for a little bit. But they have stockpiled some picks, adding another pick. They're a 5th-rounder. You take what you can get when you have an aging tight end. And for Arizona's sake, they needed a tight end after the unfortunate Max Williams injury. Now, there are a lot of mouths to feed there, but Zach Ertz will be a tight end too. And for Dallas Goedert's sake, this solidifies him. He's an every week starter now, and obviously he didn't play this week because of the of testing or the COVID test. But he'll be back next week. Should be good to go, and we'll be locked in. All right, so let's dive into the remaining games on the slate here over the weekend. Again, I'm not going to get to Monday here, but I'll get to everything else. Don't forget, there is another Sunday morning game, top of the morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is a pretty cool spot to play an NFL game. I saw how they unfold the field there. That's pretty wild. A grass field for soccer, turf field for football. But regardless, it'll be Miami and Jacksonville in this one. On the Miami side, we have seen the many faces of Myles Gaskin over the last couple of weeks here, last 2 weeks to be precise. 2 weeks ago, he was a non-factor, played just 12 snaps, barely touched the football. Last week, he was a huge factor, 10 catches, went off. Now, I do have something pretty interesting to note, though, about Myles Gaskin. He's one of just 8 running backs to average over 5 targets per game. But of that group, by far the fewest touches per game at just 11.2. So translation, his production is passing game dependent. He is a passing down back at this point. I know he wasn't last year, but it's a whole new year here in 2021. Passing down backs are heavily game script dependent. In games where you think Miami is going to lose, Myles Gaskin's probably going to be a pretty good play. In games where you think Miami's going to win, he's not going to be a good play. Do you think they're going to beat Jacksonville? Jacksonville already on the clock. So, anyway, use him at your own peril there. On the other side, of course, you're not using James Robinson at your own peril. You are firing him up with confidence. 3 weeks in a row here of top 12 fantasy production, 22 forced missed tackles on the season. So effective. And thankfully, things have unfolded this way because, it still seems crazy that they drafted Travis. Not that Travis Etienne was drafted in the first round, but that the Jags drafted him still seems very odd. Because James Robinson is a very quality player. And actually, that's where I want to key in on for player prop purposes. Right now, tough to find some player prop lines out there for this game. It looks like some things are in flux. Obviously, you have things in flux at wide receiver with Devontae Parker not going to play in this one. Xavier Howard also out here, by the way, which actually kind of helps things out for Marvin Jones. But regardless, the one line I did find, and I wanted to go to this line because of how effective James Robinson has been, is his rushing yards line. 74.5, minus 115 on either side of DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm hammering that over. Ordinarily, I'd look at that and I'd be like, you know what? I don't want to play this line. But I look at what Robinson is doing. As I mentioned, 22 forced missed tackles. He's one of just 3 backs with at least 50 carries to average over 4 yards after contact per attempt. This dude is beasting right now, and he's facing a Miami defense that cannot defend the run. Even if you think Miami's going to win this game, that doesn't mean Robinson. We saw it last week. Robinson's ripping off long runs. 72 or 74.5, that is. Feels like it's just a bit too low, so I'll take the over on that one. By the way, if you did want to search around for lines, we got a great tool for you over at ftnbets.com. It's a free tool. You don't have to be a subscriber. It's called the Prop Shop. It's the Google of sports betting. You go in, you type in James Robinson's name. That's what it looks like right there. And you then will simply find all of the lines that are available in your area. If you're in Pennsylvania like I am, you can see all the Pennsylvania books and the lines that are available, the odds that are available for them. You can do it for teams. You can do it for players. It's a great resource. And like I said, it is free. You can click through the link as well from there and, call it a day, place your bets, and hopefully cash those tickets after the fact. Let's move on to Green Bay and Chicago. On the Chicago side of things is really where our fantasy attention is this week because, hey, David Montgomery missing time. We saw last week a full-blown committee in that backfield between Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert, which, A, we didn't expect. B, we didn't expect both of them to get 18 touches. And I think, C, we didn't expect Khalil Herbert to actually look slightly better than Damian Williams as an early down runner. Williams' fantasy numbers were better, but Herbert was the better player. But you know what? It's all moot anyway because Damian Williams is not going to play this week. He is another player on the COVID list. Seems to be going around in the NFL right now. A lot of players on the COVID list. So he's not playing this week. That puts Khalil Herbert in the driver's seat to touch the ball a ton in this contest. And I mentioned a little bit more effective. It really comes down to yards after contact per attempt. Thanks to our team at FTN Data, my guys in the trenches who have been charting this stuff all along. We have this information at our disposal. You can get it as well at ftnfantasy.com. But 2.72 yards after contact per attempt for Khalil Herbert. Is that special? No, it's not. 4.0, that like James Robinson right now, you are up, you're hanging out with the gods. 3.0 is where I want to see it. 3 is the magic number, 3.0 or better. 2.5 or below, we have a problem. So he's not in a problem range. It's okay. Damian Williams, 2.19. That's not good. So he certainly outperformed him after contact last week. And hey, if you have Khalil Herbert, you can actually use him as a top 20 guy. Did not think I was going to say that sentence, at least this quickly into the season. But I want to focus on his quarterback in this one. Justin Fields so far has been covered up. Now, this is an interesting contest, and this is a very interesting line. 206.5 in terms of passing yards. That's currently over at FanDuel, minus 114 on either side. Initially, I look at numbers and I say, you know what, it's an under. But I'm actually going to play an over on this one as well. Why? Because Green Bay has nobody in their secondary. Jair Alexander is out. He's on injured reserve. Kevin King is banged up. You're scraping, even if Kevin King is suiting up in this one, you're still scraping the bottom of the barrel. So Justin Fields, well, I still think the training wheels are going to be on. The leash is going to be on him. They're not going to just let him loose here. I still think that line is just a tick too low for Justin Fields, so I'm going to take the over on that one. Let's move on to Cincinnati and Detroit. Joe Mixon, one of the many names here who was on the injury report, goes limited, then does not practice. Now it looks like he's going to be good to go and apparently handle a full workload. They're going to need him to handle a full workload because Samaje Perine, who was the lead back last week, he's not going to play this week. He's another player on the COVID list. So you have rookie Chris Evans. So I think, hey, man, dynasty purposes, you got Chris Evans. Okay, I'm interested. But for season-long redraft purposes right now, it's going to be Mixon's game here. Great matchup against Detroit. 1.2 rushing scores per game allowed to the position. In other words, 6 on the season to do the math on that one. So definitely liking Mixon here. Love DeAndre Swift on the other side. But I want to focus on Mr. Joe Burrow. Burrow, unlike last year where they had to throw the ball a ton, they don't have to do that this year. There's certainly more balance to their offense this year, and Burrow has not thrown the ball a ton. The line right now on passing attempts is 35.5. I am seeing that over a DraftKings minus 130 to the under. It is juice to the under, but I still want to play it. I want to take that action there. He has only topped this line once this season. It was last week, but I do not think they're going to need to against Detroit. Now, Detroit's a feisty team. I dig the spirit of Detroit, but I do think that they are going to be a little bit overmatched here against Cincinnati. I expect to see a lot of Joe Mixon here. I do not think there's a lot of throw in this one. Now, Jamar Chase, love him. Love him for fantasy purposes. T. Higgins, upside wide receiver 3. Tyler Boyd also in the wide receiver 3 conversation. But that's more of an efficiency thing than it is a volume thing. And I just don't suspect this is a game where we see Joe Burrow go out and set a season high in passing attempts. Moving on to Houston and Indianapolis. This one's pretty darn straightforward. There are very few games this week where there's not something like crazy going on, but it's pretty straightforward. On the Houston side, Brandon Cooks, and that's about it. On the Indy side, I mean, of course you have Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. Maybe you stream Carson Wentz. Maybe you stream him. I don't know. I don't feel that great about it. But he did have over 400 passing yards on Monday night. But regardless, where I want to key in on is on the Houston side. Last week was certainly a little bit of a surprise. We saw the two Chris's get in there and put up big games. Chris Moore, who ended up earning himself a roster spot on the 53-man because he was a practice squad guy last week, and Chris Conley. It was also a game where Brandon Cooks did not perform well in terms of the box score, the stat sheet. Brandon Cooks was shadowed in that by J.C. Jackson. Bill Belichick did what he does. He took out the top weapon for the Texans. Chris Conley had a pretty big game. But Chris Conley, his receiving yards line is not high. I'm looking at him kind of chuckling because I'm saying like, oh, it inflated his line. It's only 29.5 receiving yards. It's not like it's like 50.5. But still, 29.5 receiving yards is still too high for Chris Conley. He's been under this in 4 of 5 games, with the exception of last week. And even last week, when he put up over 80 receiving yards, he still only had 4 targets in that contest. Not heavy volume for him. So I'm going to take an under on Chris Conley. That's minus 115 right now on PointsBet. I have actually seen this line at 28.5 elsewhere too, so I'll take that extra yard. Moving on to the Rams and the Giants, another game with some question marks. Well, not a major one, though, because we know essentially Saquon Barkley is not going to play. The question mark is, when is Saquon Barkley back? The Giants will not tell us. And this is one of really 2 things, I think. This is either a grade 1 or a grade 2 ankle sprain for Saquon Barkley. That is the difference between a 1 to 3 week absence and really a 4 to 8 week absence for Barkley. I would think he'd be placed on injured reserve by now if it was a 4 to 8 week absence, but who the heck knows? As of right now, you can really figure, though, that Devonta Booker will be the lead back. Last week, we saw him get in there 60 snaps. Of course, we're only a couple weeks removed from him being a healthy scratch as well. But it does seem like he'll be the lead back with some Gary Brightwell in the mix. On the other side, really straightforward. Daryl Henderson, he's like the ultimate high floor but low ceiling guy this season. You know, he has not been a top 10 fantasy option, but he hasn't finished worse than RB20 in any given week. He's played 4 games. He's averaging 17.5 touches per game. So, you know, really locked in there. But let's go back to Devonta Booker. The Rams are not an easy matchup, but at the same time, you get a couple things working for you here. Aaron Donald is banged up. Looks like he will play here, but he is banged up. The Rams are also allowing 4.3 yards per carry to opposing backfields. So if the volume is there for Booker, what do you think Booker averages in this game? 4 yards per carry, give or take. How many carries do you think he has? Do you think that Devonta Booker has 12 carries? And if he averages 4 yards a carry, that's 48 yards, right? Quick math. Let's break out the TI-84. Quick math. All right, well, that's an over then. 46.5 rushing yards is the line right now on DraftKings. Juiced to the under, by the way, minus 110. This is I like this opportunity right here because I think we're taking advantage of perception over reality. Yes, the Rams are a very good defense, but you have been able to move the football against them on the ground. And it does look like Daniel Jones will be under center. Now, if it was Mike Glennon, I really have almost no confidence in them moving the football. Daniel Jones at least gives you that mobility. He has shown a little bit of upside with his arm. You get Shepard back, you get Slayton back, and you have a breaking out Kadarius Toney. No Kenny Golladay here, but maybe that's a blessing in disguise, if anything, because you'll now be able to certainly keep Toney on the field as much as you want in this contest. So I'm going to take that over. I'm going to take that over and take advantage of perception over reality with Devonta Booker. Let's move on to Kansas City and Washington. A couple question marks here. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on injured reserve. So how are the touches divided between Daryl Williams and Jerick McKinnon? Because, oh yes, good old Jerick McKinnon's going to be involved this week. Last week was 37-27 in terms of snaps, but keep in mind that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was in the game for some of that. So Daryl Williams figures to be the lead early down back. Of course, you'll have Jerick McKinnon involved in passing down situations, and they could throw the ball a bunch in this one. On the other side, though, here's where things just go off the rails. Terry McLaurin, DNP today. Whoa. Okay. Not good. Antonio Gibson is listed as questionable. I don't think there's anything there. I think that, basically everything we've heard out of that coaching staff is they're minimizing this. He's downplaying it. He's fine. They gave him 22 touches last week. He should be good to go. McScorin, though, on the other hand, I don't know about that one. Could this be a week where DeAndre Carter is, a fantasy viable player in season long? Possibly. I mean, I like him as a punt in DFS, but regardless, a little bit of a mess there. A little bit of a mess. I'm now a little bit more reluctant to use Taylor Heineke. If McScorin is out there, we're good to go. But you also have Curtis Samuel banged up as well. So it's a complete mess. Needless to say, I don't have lines for most of those guys, so I have to go to the other side. I do have a line for Daryl Williams in terms of rushing attempts. BetMGM right now has it at 10.5. Now, it is juiced to the over at -145. I have seen some books have this at 11.5, heavily juiced to the under. But I'm going to, I'll take the gimme putt on this one. I might even play over on 11.5, to be honest with you. Daryl Williams is going to touch the ball plenty in this game. Now, is it going to be 25 touches? Very unlikely. But as the primary early down back, what do we think? 12, 13, 14 carries, I think sounds perfectly reasonable. So 10.5 seems like it'll be a fairly easy line for him to get over. I mean, thus, you are taking the discount, you're taking the juice here on that. But regardless, that's where I'm going there. Let's go to Minnesota and Carolina. Dalvin Cook will be back, so that's good. He is playing the worst fantasy matchup for running backs, so that's bad. But at least he's back on the field and he should be a full blast here because he was full in practice yesterday. I don't see a practice report for today. It looks like he is full today. Justin Jefferson, some questions, but he's good to go as well. So that was a collective sigh of relief on that side of things. On the other side, though, no Christian McCaffrey for a third straight week. So I guess it would have made sense for them to possibly have put him on injured reserve. But we can't go back in time and change that. What we do know, though, is week 1 without McCaffrey, Chuba Hubbard was a big-time letdown. Week 2 without McCaffrey, he was a monster. Touched the ball 29 times in that game. Basically what we had hoped to get out of him, we got out of him. So I would expect that again, and this is a very favorable matchup against a poor Minnesota run defense, allowing 4.76 yards per carry to opposing backs. So, hey, Chuba, fire him up. Fire him up. Maybe this is the last. Hopefully, if you have McCaffrey, this is the last week you get to use Chuba. But use him in this one for sure as a top 20 option. Let's go to the quarterback, though. Sam Darnold, a.k.a. Sam Newton, Cam Darnold, whatever you want to call him. Well, last week he only had 10 rushing yards, so he wasn't scoring multiple rushing touchdowns. However, in week 3, he did have 11. Week 4 was the big game. He had 35 rushing yards. And I want to get back in on that one here. It's 10.5 is the line right now in terms of rushing yards, -115 on DraftKings. I'm going to take an over. Now, the over is always risky with quarterbacks in case they take a knee because the knee sends you back. I wish that wasn't included, but it is technically. But regardless, 10.5, I still think we're going to have enough of a pad that in case he does take a knee at the end of the game, it won't push us to the under. I've had that happen one too many times in the past. I'm going to take that over on Sam Darnold in this one. Chargers, Baltimore, Ravens, Lamar Jackson coming off a signature performance on Monday night. He's been an absolute monster. And the key with Lamar, elite fantasy Lamar or regular fantasy Lamar. Regular fantasy Lamar is a quarterback 1. He's a back-end quarterback 1 who gets you plenty of points with his legs. That's the key. Plenty of points with his. It's a high floor. Elite Lamar also gets you points with his arm. And we've seen that this season. That's where things have been special with Lamar Jackson. That's where things were special this past week. I hope you got the over on his passing yards prop at the beginning of the season. So far this year, average depth of target of 10.5 yards downfield. That is a big number. It leads all qualifying passers right now. The higher that number is, the more upside we're talking about. That's really what it's all about. If you're talking a little dink and dunk quarterback with a 6.0 average depth of target, there's no upside with that guy. When that guy is up over 9 yards and especially up over 10 yards, plenty of upside. Now, there's more volatility, of course, the higher that ADOT goes. But with Lamar, this looks like it's another special year. Now, granted, we have 5 weeks of a sample so far, but he's off to the races. I have a prop for him. I'm going to come back to it in a second. I will say this. The backfield's a mess. If I have to use someone, it's Latavius Murray, and I would reluctantly do so. Don't love that backfield whatsoever. It's a complete mess there. And then on the other side, I mean, it's really straightforward. It looks like Mike Williams should be good. I don't have the practice report. He should be good. Anything's possible in week 6. But I did want to point out Austin Ekeler real quick before I get back to Lamar Jackson. So Austin Ekeler last year played 10 games, ran the ball in the red zone 18 times, had 2 goal line carries. This year, he has played 5 games. He's run the ball in the red zone 18 times, and he has 4 goal line carries. He scored on 3 of them. man, if Austin Ekeler stays healthy, this dude is going to deliver on that promise he made to fantasy football players before the season started. It's so much fun to watch him, and it's not a bad matchup. 6 rushing scores allowed by the Ravens to running backs this year. But Lamar, as I promised, 231.5 passing yards. Sometimes it takes the sports books a little bit of time to catch up to what's actually happening on the field. And I know the Chargers pass defense is pretty good. I get that. But Baker still put up, Baker was way over this line last week. With Lamar's upside, with Marquise Brown playing downfield, with it looks like Rashad Bateman on the field this week, with Mark Andrews doing what he can do, I like the over on this one. Last year, it's usually like you run away from Lamar Jackson passing yardage lines because it's like, I don't want any piece of that. But this year, they are very much in play on the over, and certainly this week, that over is in play. Arizona, Cleveland, I'm really looking forward to seeing how good Arizona is. How do they fare against a Cleveland defense that we know is quite good? Now, of course, that's not the big story of this game. The big story, Nick Chubb. Say it ain't so. Nick Chubb not playing in this one, and the team apparently is kicking around the idea of putting him on injured reserve. This is why we can't have nice things. Well, we do have one other nice thing, though. Kareem Hunt is pretty freaking good. In fact, this year, if you look at what Nick Chubb has been able to do, phenomenal. 7 runs of 15 plus. Yards after contact per attempt, though, Chubb is elite. 4.40 yards after contact per attempt, but there is one player who's done better than him. Kareem Hunt. 4.69 nice yards after contact per attempt. He's been phenomenal. And he's actually outscoring Chubb for fantasy purposes because of his involvement in the passing game. When Chubb misses time, Kareem Hunt is the clear lead back. Who else touches the ball? Hell if I know. Dearness Johnson, perhaps. Felton, perhaps. But it's all about Kareem Hunt. I don't think you're going to have any way out of this if you don't have Kareem Hunt here. You're going to have to maybe look elsewhere. I don't think you can manufacture. I would rather go with Jerick McKinnon than one of those 2 other guys in the Cleveland backfield. So regardless, Kareem Hunt's an elite play. We know that. This has thrown a wrench into the system in terms of lines. I don't have any Cleveland lines right now. On the Arizona side, hey, Kyler Hopkins coming off a pretty solid game, even though the performance as a whole was bad for Arizona for fantasy purposes last week. Hopkins was fine. But the backfield is interesting. And this is very similar to what I said earlier in this video about Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin is the passing down back, and then you have Malcolm Brown essentially is the early down back. Well, in Arizona, it's pretty clear. James Conner, early down, short yardage back, and Chase Edmonds, passing down back. So in games where you think they're going to play from behind, which this team's pretty good, so how often does that happen? Chase Edmonds is the appealing back, and then the other way around if you think they play from the lead. Well, this week they could. They have a very tough matchup here. Cleveland is very good against opposing running backs, 5th worst fantasy matchup for the position. So I would, begrudgingly use Chase Edmonds as a fringe RB2 here. But I do think there's some opportunity, though, because especially, as I said, if they do get behind, you're going to see more of him. His rushing yardage line is quite low right now. It's 33.5. Over on that one, it's juiced. There's no juice on either side. -114 over at FanDuel. Over on that one is pretty intriguing for me, so I'm going to take that over there based on what I think the game script is going to look like. Vegas and Denver, I've talked about the John Gruden thing numerous times. I'm not going to rehash all of that here. The simple point is I honestly don't know how this impacts the team. Don't know. We've seen coaches get fired during the course of a season, and in some instances, an interim comes in, it galvanizes the team. They go out and they maybe win a couple games, and then they take it from there. I don't remember anything like this happening. So I have no idea what the impact is here. I have no clue. I know this is a tough matchup, though. I know Denver's defense is very, very, very good. I know Derek Carr got off to a hot start, but he's starting to cool off a little bit, and he's still only thrown 8 passing touchdowns on the season, so I don't want to use him. I know I want to use Darren Waller every single week. I don't really want to use the wideouts, though, and I think I have to use Josh Jacobs if I have him on my roster. But Josh Jacobs right now, 1.89 yards after contact per attempt is not good. On the other side, speaking of that metric, how about this? On the season, Devonta Williams, 3.08. That's good. Melvin Gordon, 2.35. That's not especially good. A change is coming here soon. Eventually, Devonta Williams is going to take over. If you have Melvin Gordon, it's the time to sell on Melvin Gordon. In that backfield, they're both RB2s this week, though. Let's go back to Josh Jacobs, though. I just mentioned that, hey, I don't love the yards after contact per attempt, but the volume is going to be there. We know the team does not trust Kenyon Drake as a ball carrier. So when I see a line of 47.5 right now on FanDuel, -114 on either side, I also see that line as high as 53.5 elsewhere because I use the prop shop at ftnbets.com. I love the over on this one. I don't love Josh Jacobs at all, but give me the extra 6 yards of a cushion, and I'll take that over every single time. Even though the Denver run defense is very good, it's a volume play. Again, like I just said about Devonta Booker, well, hey, if you think Josh Jacobs gets 15 carries, the over is very much in play here. Even if he has 12 carries, the over could very well be in play. So there we go with that. All right, 2 more games on the list. Let's go to Dallas and New England. Fortunately, I don't think there's any major. Oh, well, no, I lied. There is one. Damian Harris. Too many players to keep track of here. If Harris does not go in this one, and I don't have news in front of me right now. Heck, this news may already be out there, but Ramondre Stevenson would be a sort of desperation flex. I'm not overly bullish on him. Otherwise, there's really not much to like there outside of maybe Jacoby Myers. On the Dallas side, you know who you like. It's Dak, it's Zeke, it's CeeDee, it's Cooper, it's Dalton Schultz, but is it Tony Pollard? Well, I love Tony Pollard, and I love what he's been able to do so far to the season. He has more runs of 15 plus than any running back in the league except Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. He has 5 of them. Now, to be fair, Zeke has 4 of them. So it's not like Zeke's getting dramatically outperformed. I don't want to go with that. It's a 60-40 split in that backfield. The question, can we use him as anything more than a flex right now? And I think the answer is still no, because he's averaging 12.6 touches per game. I want to see that number higher before I would trust him as an RB2. And we're close. We're very close, but we're not quite there just yet. So keep that in mind. But let's go back to Ezekiel Elliott. At least 2 catches in 4 of 5 games this season. So I'm going to hone in on that receiving yards line. Right now, DraftKings Sportsbook, 13.5. Give me the over. Give me the over. If he catches 2 balls, it's going to be hard for him to not get. I realize he did just catch 2 balls and not go over on this one. But I do think we see something more like 16, 17 receiving yards for him. And I do think he catches 2 balls here, by the way. So easy over for me. He averages about 8 yards a catch. That gets you at 16. That gives you a nice healthy over. All right, let's round it out with Seattle. Remember, I'm not doing Monday because I'll be back on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern to break down 5 prop bets for that. We'll also talk a little bit about everything that's developed so far during the week. I mean, there's so much to talk about already. Let's hope nothing else goes sideways, but it will, because that's the NFL and it's what keeps us coming back. But Seattle, Pittsburgh, on the Seattle side, Russell Wilson practiced? What the heck? This dude is all right, he's going to be out 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. Nah, he's back in practice. He's not going to play this week, but if you have Russell Wilson in fantasy, you have to think, wow, all right, maybe this isn't going to be as bad as I thought. It'll be Geno this week. DK Metcalf, got to keep an eye on his status because he went DNP yesterday. Sometimes that could be a rest day, but sometimes it could be worse. Chris Carson, if he doesn't go in this one, Alex Collins will be the lead back. He is a just-a-guy type who averaged so far this season 2.07 yards after contact per attempt. Don't really love that, especially against a good Steelers run defense. Of course, knows Juju Smith-Schuster for the Steelers. So you're going to have a lot of Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. We have some clarity there. I have Johnson at wide receiver 12. Wide receiver 20 for Claypool. By the way, if you want my detailed breakdown of wide receiver cornerback matchups, you can get that over at ftnfantasy.com. There's some great stats from the FTN data team right now. We're getting things like separation, contested catches, created catches, all kinds of fun stuff. Those guys are crushing it. You know who else is crushing it? Najee Harris. I think the numbers really need to paint the picture here, though, because you could say, oh, yeah, he's been good. No. Here's how he's been so far. He's leading running backs 7.8 targets per game. He's one of just a few running backs over 20 touches per game, 21.2. He has 4 runs of 15 plus yards, which is right up there among the league leaders. He's averaging 3.21 yards after contact per attempt, and he is 5th among running backs in fantasy points per game. You can take all your preseason offensive line narratives and shove them you know where, because it doesn't matter when it comes to running backs. Volume is king, especially when you're a good player like Najee Harris. And so in a game where there's basically no lines available, we have to go to Najee Harris here. The only line that I was really able to find, one of the few that I liked, 72.5 rushing yards for Najee Harris. I'm going to hammer the over. It's actually juiced to the under right now. That's a minus 110 on the over. So far this season, Seattle has been extremely friendly to opposing backfields. They're averaging 126.2 rushing yards per game. He is the only show in town, so I'll take 100% of that if we can get to that average, and we'll crush that over. We're going to crush a lot of overs and unders over at FTNBets.com this week, so make sure you go check it out. Promo code RATPACK gets you that discount. That discount also works at FTNFantasy.com and FTNDaily.com, and all the sites are powered by FTN Data. Really want to get in on this stuff. It is phenomenal. All right. Hopefully nothing else crazy happens. If it does, we will be updating all along at all of our websites, all 3 of the sites, and I will continue to probably make very bad jokes on Twitter. You can follow me there at Jeff Ratcliffe on Instagram. FTN Fantasy at FTNFantasy.com or at FTN Fantasy on Twitter, at FTN Daily, and at FTN Bets are our handles over there. And I will be back on Monday, 2 p.m. to talk some Monday Night Football. Enjoy the games this weekend. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, and I'm out.